you are a hip-hop producer, and you're taking a beat from a recorded piece of music and playing with it in the studio and making it into something else, you're always risking being hauled into court and being sued for copyright infringement.
One of the most important cases in the United States is called Bridgeport v. Dimension Films.
Yes, Bridgeport music is the owner of copyrights, yes. I used to play the accordion. We have the archive of rap, mostly rap. They all are mostly sampled, yes. Me, myself, and I, yes. That was my first experience of a sample, and then we started to understand that we may have to listen to some records, to some CDs.
Now, the original George Clinton Funkadelic song was Get Off Your Ass and Jam.
I think I'm going to play it to you.
In other words, get up and get up and get up and dance. Great song.
If you're familiar with Get Off Your Ass and Jam, it's the opening riff to the song, so it's obviously that thing that cues you to what's coming next.
So essentially what we just heard is this. 3 notes on the guitar.
2 seconds was taken from Get Off Your Ass. By the way, it's wonderful to hear learned judges having to deal with song titles like Get Off Your Ass and Jam.
Dr. Dre and other members of NWA do a song called 100 Miles and Running.
Basically what they did was they took a portion of the intro guitar riff, used it as a loop, but they stretched it out so that it fit the tempo. So it sounds more like this. So now if you listen to it. Here's the background. It almost sounds like a siren. And they use that in and out throughout the song.
It's very difficult to hear that it's been highly manipulated and the context is so different.
The phrase de minimis comes from the Latin maxim de minimis non curat lex, which roughly means the law isn't concerned with insignificant offenses. So it was the ideal case to find de minimis use protecting NWA.
Now, many people would say that's de minimis, but it is not. The court decided it is illegal to take anything from a recording, and it's they also say it's not creative. It was a wake-up call for the industry as well, because they thought, oh, we're getting away with it, and they didn't.
And they had a rather stark and severe one-sentence line that said, if you sample, you license, period.
But this is the way hip-hop works. This is the way rap music works. So many people have said that that is the death knell for hip-hop music.
It definitely changed from this to this. And of course we were the topic of the year with all the majors, including publishers and record labels. Some people like us and some people don't. That's always the case when you have a lawsuit.
Is George Clinton satisfied with the way you arranged his song as long as
You would have to ask himself, not me.
All of this brings us to the
So hopefully, like in a couple of sessions, we'll have like a lawyer coming in talking about these issues of copyright, copyleft, Creative Commons, because it's somehow also like at the forefront, I think, of a lot of like the issues in this project. And what we were last week when we were talking a lot about music, because it's a good introduction into this idea of sampling and referencing and whatever, but also because within the context of the post-production text, we were thinking like, how does your consumption or production or enjoyment of a like DJ set, for example, alter if you do or if you don't know the references? You know, whereas within the contemporary art field, how does your experience of that contemporary artwork change if you do or you don't know the references? And on and on. Because I don't know, I mean, like, what's interesting for me anyway is you can distinctly recognize what the samples are there. Whereas in the illustration from the copy back copy, unless you're really listening very hard and you know that sample back to front, then the fact that it's been stretched out and laid with other tunes, to me makes it like kind of very different. Catalina, I don't know, are you going to stay? Would you like to talk a little bit now and then go, or are you going to stay for the...
I can stay, so whatever suits.
Yeah, I think that's... Because if you needed to go, then I would say that...
No, I wanted to stay, so it's...
Okay. Cool, because then what I would do is I would say maybe we can go back to the text, to where we were, because I think we've got some of the words that are in the introduction. No, do you have a copy, Mario? No. Maybe we can share. We didn't get very far.
And we speak about spaces.
using society as catalog of forms and investing in fashion and media. And maybe some of these also fit into some other things we do anyhow in Überleberhaus, like investing in fashion and media, for example. But let's start from the beginning. So I found very interesting one work he was mentioning here, which was Fresh a Conchi by McCarthy. And then I found a quote by McCarthy, which also shows some, or which also gives maybe, or refers to some strategies we can extract from this whole world of citing and quoting and working with the archive as basis. So in this first part, which he's calling reprogramming existing works, like eine Reprogrammierung schon bereits bestehender Arbeiten, also Künstler, die sich mit Werken auseinandersetzen, die es schon gibt. Existing works taken from artists by other artists. And Mike Kelly and Paul McCarthy, they took, or they referred to a work, or different works by Vito Acconci. Vito Acconci worked in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. He did videos and performative works. And here are just some stills from his works, and I tried to find some which relate to the new work by Kelly and McCarthy. Unfortunately, we still have this lousy projector here, but you can see, for example, here we have something which we can probably recognize here. So some kind of really close reference between the existing artwork, which was the Acconci one, and the remake, so to say, or the work which was developed out of it. And this as a strategy which is coded by Murillo as reprogramming. And McCarthy said, das Werk ist ein Verweis auf Art Now, auf eine Revival der 1970er Jahre und auf ein Interesse an der Jugend in der Kunstwelt. Zudem sind auch Bezüge zu Hollywood 8-Filmen und zu Softpornos aus den Hollywood Hills zu erkennen. Bei Fresh a Conchi wird die New Yorker Kunstszene mit Hollywood kombiniert. Zwei Arten von Ästhetik überschneiden sich. And I marked in red the words which are probably interesting for us, trying to find out which strategies artists use to develop this reprogrammation, like Verweise, Bezüge, Kombinationen und Überschneidungen. Another example is, and Murillo calls this annexing. We have here the Glass House by Philip Johnson, an architect, and he built that in Connecticut, and I didn't know it before. Maybe some of you know about this famous glass house. I think it's a very precise example of modernist architecture, very open, very like transparent building, manifesting and exemplifying the idea of modernist architecture. And this artist Rikrit Tiravanija, who is always used by Murillo for many examples he tries to develop, he rebuilt this glass house in ply and plexi and kit size. So it was a replica of Philip Johnson's
he said basically, if you're like in your late 20s and early 30s now, then you're part of the revivalist generation. The revivalist generation re-inhabit earlier cultural forms, but they don't do it in an ironic or in a kind of piss-taking way. They do it in a kind of reviving way, and they want to relive the essence of that. They're not doing it in a kind of knowing nod to that situation. And it's quite difficult to kind of describe. But the way they're re-inhabiting it, he seems to suggest is kind of, paradoxical as it sounds, is a kind of genuine way of re-inhabiting that. So this whole, and this is what this issue, like of the mashing up the archive, of all the musical references that we're having, is all like the Sarah Johnson Morris video, about the Philip Johnson.
So I'm looking for it from Sarah Morris.
Like, how do you begin to experience these artworks, and how can they not be exclusive? You know, this is my question. Like you mentioned, it's an artwork within an artwork, and like this kind of makes me think, well, it just goes in on itself, and if you go in on yourself, then where do you arrive as a cultural phenomenon? If you're just looking in on yourself, well, actually, you probably come out somewhere else. You know, if you're thinking about it spatially at some point, and this is really like, I suppose, with, you know, again, always trying to come back to what we've got upstairs. It's like a whole sort of world of cultural production that it's important to respect, you know, and it's important to use, like, legally, like, somehow fairly, and also so we don't get in trouble. But also, like, how can you use this? My own position is, like, not be contingent, your understanding of this new work not be contingent on you knowing of the previous work. I think that's what I'm trying to get around. Is that possible? And again, all these works, like, I was just thinking about this. Can you like experience this untitled work as someone who doesn't know the earlier work, that doesn't know that whole canon? You can, but what does that do? Anyone have any answers?
Yes. No. But also to think about, I mean, what you cited earlier, and I think it's quite important with the intersections and layers of these things, because when it's also an epistemological take even to say this is remake, this is revival, this is so and so on, this is a new form of art. Because I was just thinking when you referenced that house from pop culture, for example, the Phoenix video where they were using Wahnfried. It was Phoenix, no? Or was it Phoenix? Yeah. So when is a cultural product used as a backdrop only in a sense, and in how far is it becoming part and integral part and necessary ingredient of a new artwork? You know, where are there borders, and is it important to put them? And when is that on the stage, and for what? Is it the Phoenix video? You know, of Franz Ferdinand? No.
Yeah, no, it's from Phoenix. How's it called?
The one that's shot here.
List something.
Yeah, Listomania. Yeah, that's Listomania.
But actually, this also makes me think that whilst I was just going on about all these references, like later on in the text, Bourdieu talks about how, like, when you consume a work, you produce it, and he says this quote: "No one reads a book the way the author has intended to read that book to be read." You know? So even if you do know all the references, you're still going to produce it differently in your own head. So on the one hand, that seems to be quite, to me, like a democratic viewership, you know, because it's basically, you know, death of the author, blah blah blah, it's kind of giving responsibility to the viewer to produce the work that they produce in their own mind. So if they don't know these references, well, they're still going to produce their own work. But I know, like, and I was just in Torsten, but like certain people, like my mother, for example, they go into a space, like a museal space or a gallery, and they'll have this sense that they don't get it. You know, this is kind of a familiar thing. So even if
what's different, art always has, or very often has referenced something. And if you don't have the cultural background that goes with it, then you're lost in front of it, or you're bound to misunderstand it, which is maybe also an okay interpretation of it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But what I see happening with many of the works that Bourdieu quotes is that this knowledge that is referred to in the artworks is more and more narrow, is more and more obscure, more and more specialized. More or less, when Piero was painting, the Bible was still an idea familiar to most of the people around him. Whereas these guys are referencing more and more often things that are familiar to an extremely small art world of a few thousand people in the world, and that's about it. And then, aren't they just locking themselves up?
Yeah, I'd say like, I mean, I think it's part of the whole influence of modernism, like the reference, you know, the strategy of reference and allusion. And I think I would say that the work is a complex, it's a bundle of elements which have an autonomy, which function as a viewer without having knowledge of a previous cultural spectrum within which they're situated, and then of course the references which give you another path into that and add these other layers, which is a way of making a work more nuanced for a very specific audience, like you said. And that in a lot of these works you see the balance shifting very much to the referential and away from the autonomous. I would say, you know.
I would say the same, and I think it's a very narrow referential. You say that your mom said she doesn't get it. Last time I visited the Recreator of Venetia exhibition, I walked in, I was served soup, I walked out. If you haven't read Relational Aesthetics, you have no clue what this is about. And this is, I think, becoming more and more difficult. It's becoming art for very specialized people. I think so.
So it's the opposite of democracy.
But at the same time, you could you argue that to experience soup, you don't need a vocabulary.
You don't need an artist either. I could have walked into the closest restaurant.
Yeah, but I mean that is an experiential artwork, isn't it? Do you need like a full? I don't think. You know.
To identify it as an artwork, you do need some sort of
well, yeah.
Although it's still a different experience if you have a soup in
I mean,
museum's context and having it in a restaurant, so there's a difference.
Yeah, but Venetia it's not so clear because it was halfway in the museum context.
I went to Hamburg 2 weeks ago to the long night of the museums, and there was an exhibition by Hans F. I don't know his name, but it was called Kunstausstellung. So that was the title of the Kunstausstellung, and it was about all, like everyday art or objects from everyday life which should be read as art. And he put on just like took pieces from our daily surroundings and put them on a platform or framed them, and didn't actually do much with the art itself or with the object itself. But his point was that he really wanted to raise awareness to the everyday art, and I couldn't really respond to it. And I think his idea was to really reflect, to make people more reflective and more conscious about everyday things. But there was one piece of him which said, art has the right to be bad. And I really felt that this exhibition was bad. It wasn't doing anything to me. And if that's art and we can't really distinguish anymore what exactly engages more with me, and